right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Move, Crush, Count. Today's interview is sponsored by J&L Marketing, a digital marketing agency helping business leaders outsmart and outmarket their toughest competitors, not outspend them. With J&L Marketing, you get to move the crowd, crush the competition, and count the money. I want you to make sure to check out move.crush.count.com for more episodes, and make sure you hit the subscribe button so you get notified on all our future guests and new episodes. Today's interview is all about what every business leader needs to know, especially when it comes to deep data. It's titled How to Find New Profit Opportunities. My name is Scott Joseph, and today I'm talking with business growth expert, and I want to make sure, because this is live, that I don't.
Here goes, Danny.
I know how to pronounce it. All right. I just get tongue tied. So Danny Zaslavsky, which I nailed it perfect pre. All right.
How about we just go with Danny Z, Scott?
Danny Z. That is what we're going to go from this.
I like it.
But Danny Zaslavsky, and we're going to talk to him about his company Vincue and how they're using, and more importantly, how you guys are using data so you can help businesses, specifically car dealers, stock smarter, sell faster, crush your competition, and maximize profits. Welcome, Danny.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. And you did well with my last name. Very well.
I knew how to pronounce it. And I said, why am I struggling saying it? I was just tongue tying me. So Danny, he's graciously agreed to do this interview to share some of his information, his experience, and his knowledge on how every business leader in our audience can understand how to strike back. And what I love about what you guys are doing, when people hear the term deep data, to me, the first thing that goes in their mind is, especially from a marketing side, who are we targeting? What's our target audience? And how are we going to use data to have a more relevant message and things like that? You're coming at data from a different angle, and that is you're looking at the insights to become more efficient, more productive, which is critical because this show is all about helping businesses strike back who are being marginalized and commoditized. And I think you need every advantage that you can have to be able to offset that. Now, we're dealing in times right now, I think, where there's not a lot of dealers being marginalized or commoditized. And you could say that for a lot of businesses, I think, with inventory issues. But in normal times, that is critical, right? And so, Danny, I want to thank you again for joining us. And I cannot not introduce, even though he's well known, the solutionist is joining us again. Yeah. Mr. Sandy Cerami.
Thank you, Scott.
All right. So I
just wanted to make a note of something that we had a guest on a couple of months back. His name was Bob, and Scott wanted to know how he spelt it. He said, Bob, how do I get the spelling on that first name? So don't worry about it, Zaslavsky.
That's true. That might be a true story. I didn't want to misspell it. So, all right. So first thing I want to do really, Danny, is for the people who may not know who you are, is I want to ask you just some questions about so people get a sense of who you are, your background, your education, where your experience comes from, and then we'll dive right into this on how people can use some of these insights to become more efficient, more productive, make better decisions. So tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of your background, your education, and your experience with data.
So my background is I grew up in the car business. We have an independent car dealership that my dad and another guy started in the early 80s. And I grew up in it and worked in every single department of it, either some by choice and some not by choice. But I early on just was like, how you're pulled towards a certain part of the business. I was always pulled towards, at the time, the marketing side of it, not necessarily because I loved marketing, but I later figured out that it was the place where innovation lived within a car dealership. That's where data was at the time. And so I got to create all these processes internally and with our vendors that churned our dealership into something that could be scaled. And I really, really enjoyed that. And then I've always thrived in a place where I could take industry with technology and then create solutions that helped more than just me. I've always felt that I have more to share in this life. And so I was lucky enough to meet a guy named Chris Hoke. He was introduced to me. So I'm in Kansas City for those watching, and Vincue, Kansas City is like I think they call it the prairie, Silicon Prairie of the United States. And so VinSolutions here, Auto Alert's here, Vincue is here, obviously, but I grew up with a guy named Matt Watson who started VinSolutions. And there's a whole story behind that and how we met. We met at a Sears when he was selling computers. And after he had started VinSolutions, I've always wanted to be in that technology space. And when I was going out to start a tech company, he introduced me to Chris Hoke, who today is our founder and creator of the tech we're going to talk about today.
All right. So when exactly did you get started? What gave you this idea to start this company? Why'd you do it?
So I have always felt like there were too many solutions to solve one problem. And what I mean by one problem is I believe that a car's life cycle should be managed in one system, meaning from appraisal to acquisition of buying it, to the insights on like what to do with it, the strategy. And then more importantly, as the world gets more complicated, is how to have control over that strategy with the different variables that exist. I don't believe that you should have to have 2 or 3 or 5 logins to manage that. And then the feedback that comes from those insights, whether it's from a third party, whether it's from your own website, right? The world continues to give you opportunities to maximize, but it turns into a negative when you're having to manage the same car in multiple, what I call disparate systems. So I wanted to solve that problem. And I have a team here who feels that way too, because there's so much rich data and information that comes from understanding, what did I buy? Did I do well with it? Should I replace it? What are the variables, whether it be seasonality, market demand, or competition, or all these different things? And when I can accumulate that, not just in the moment, but the way dealers think, by the week, by the month, and then look back in time, now you're competing regardless of if you're an independent or a large group. Now you're competing with the Carvanas and the CarMaxes of the world that have created solutions to win.
So go ahead, Sandy.
I love the approach, and I think it's brilliant. I think when you can simplify the number of ways that you can gather the information and ultimately deploy it into one solution, I think it's brilliant. Danny, just out of curiosity, with respect to reconditioning and the life cycle of the vehicle while it's in dealership inventory, are there tools within your tool that provide reconditioning guidance or information sharing?
So we work with reconditioning tools that will drive data into our system. So basic reconditioning absolutely can be managed. The expedition, like days to market and all that, we believe that belongs in the hands of really smart reconditioning people like Rapid Recon or True Recon. However, the piece of that that we play is that data then flows into our system so that sales managers, sales people, and as well as the public can see what I call dealer exclusive items that give what I term as the highest authentic value of the car. So there's the commoditization of the car, year, make, model, and marketability, like where it is in the country. But then dealers, and this was the problem that I had for a really long time until we started working towards a solution, is we spend money doing service to the car. We spend money certifying the car. We spend money doing giving additional promises to the consumer around that transaction that all have value to the consumer and be also increase the value of the car. And so through the system, when we bring in that data and then are able to not just communicate it through the dealer's website, but through third parties in a creative way, so that you're no longer competing on simple superlatives like fair deal, good deal, great deal, which I have a problem with. Now you're giving the dealer the ability to stand out.
And I think that's the Uber decommoditization that Scott always refers to, is how do we really differentiate ourselves and create that value story with each and every vehicle that we retail. I love that your tool does that.
Thank you. Yeah, it is at the core of why we built the solution.
So I'm curious because, pulling all this data has been, I don't want to say pulling it, having all this data, all this information, all this insights, or all these different tools in all these different locations has been a problem for a long time. And you're a newer company, so a lot of dealers may not even know that you're doing this, and you have this solution, right? I can tell you firsthand, for the dealers who do know of you, speak very highly of you guys. But my initial question is very simple. And by the way, I had to apologize. I had to take these out. I had two different conversations going on in my head at the same time. So
Scott, this is par for the course, with the schizophrenics of the world. So
I just hope it wasn't coming through on the show. So, but how in the heck did you get all this into one location? What had to happen? What did you have to do to make that happen?
Great question.
Well, look, we didn't start the simplest of businesses. In the first 3 years of building this, we got to work with the data that we could. So we started by scraping dealer websites and getting the data from how long is that car living online? When does it leave online? What's the price in which it left the internet for? How is the marketability down to the zip code or across zip codes and across, and how is that relative to independents or franchises? All of that was iterated over and over and over again until we could create our very first inventory management system with market insights. That was the first thing we created. And then we saw with the early adopters of our software in like 2015, what they liked about it and what they hated about it, and how, because asking to say, hey, you should use this system to make decisions off of that directly affect your profitability, that's a really big ask. So you can imagine so that feedback loop of, okay, what information do you need? And what we discovered early on is like the price to market and cost to market and all these things that we use today to make decisions on either acquisition or sale are predicated on the comps that live within that data set, right? And so you mentioned deep data. Well, the way I define deep data is kind of like in marketing. You can either go deep or you can go wide, right? Are we going to invite more consumers that haven't heard about us, or are we going to go deeper into the efforts, the equity that we already have? And so with data, we want accuracy, and part of that accuracy means that comp set better be perfect, because if we're changing our cost or price to market, we got to be sure that that comp set is reflective of the car that we're buying or selling. And now with the complexities of maybe call it a store or a dealership group with 17 stores with different markets, that one vehicle may have 17 different price and cost markets. And so having those insights of where you buy it and then where you sell it and how you manage that inventory is critical to survive, not to mention even thrive in the evolution that we're all going through as a dealer body.
Yeah. Danny, you bring up a great point, and you're in essence referencing the Carvana or Vroom models right now, especially on the used vehicle side. Obviously, dealers that are let's say multi-rooftop, 10, 12, 20, 50, whatever the case may be, a lot of them are using obviously universal inventory display, et cetera. Are they using your tool in order to move inventory to different parts of the country or different rooftops based on the data that you guys are able to pull and disseminate for them?
We are, yeah, absolutely. So we have groups with over 100 stores, and we have groups with a single point store. And so for the single point person, they're looking at let's talk about single appraisal, right? We are able to give them from the very foundation, obviously comps, whether it be wholesale, if they're still using MMR, but also not just having that tunnel vision, but the other auctions they have, ADESA, I-70, Auction Edge, whatever. So they can see that, and then they can choose those vehicles and create their own sub comp set from those, because not all of those are going to be accurate, and we don't need an average of cars that have a 2.5 CR, right? So the same thing that applies to similar vehicles that are in the market, and then be able to curate those down to the right dealers. We actually have a poop emoji in our software that lets you put dealers on your poop list. So if there's a dealer selling rental cars, right, let's get their vehicles off the comp set so that when we're moving fast and making price changes, either on an individual basis or across a segment, we're not making mistakes. And then this is, the evolution of our product. We identified that retail transaction data is so important, especially today, where I don't want to be looking at expert data, which is what I consider wholesale transactions. There are a bunch of experts competing in the lane to buy the same car. Let's see what they're actually leaving the market for, and then start thinking about our strategy from a retail transaction standpoint. And then lastly, and most recently in the last 18 months, we brought in private party data. So now we can see how we're competing with consumers and or what that consumer appetite is. So when you take that, right, you have all these insights on what we call RMV, or retail market value screen. You now have the power to wield where either that car or that segment of car or that price bucket or whatever is going to go. Where's it going to do the best across a dealer group, because that changes the behavior, that changes the culture, that changes that's how you take profitability and tie that to reporting. And now you have control over your business in a time where we have the Carvanas of the world putting cars in our market that don't physically exist in our market. So the only way to play that game is to have a solution that gives you the power. Otherwise, it's just hopes and dreams and complaints.
I love the fact that you're impacting both the acquisition side and the disposition side, right? Because you would be putting a far different number on a vehicle, knowing that you could actually dispose of it at another dealership location within the group. And so I think it changes the dynamic in terms of acquisition strategy just as much. Yeah,
totally. And so to be able to give your acquisition team members a buying plan that is a combination of your own sales and your experience, and the market demand in that space, and then also the competitor data. So like what's selling around. So if I see that minivan's around 25,000 and this brand is selling, but I don't have that inventory, then guess what? I can go buy that inventory, not have to spend, apologies here, marketing money to sell more cars, but just solve the problem. But I need to know, right, the good, bad, and the ugly in order to do something about it.
Amen.
All right. Before all this, how did you used to price your cars? How did you used to stock your inventory?
Well, so I'm going to talk about just Country Hill for a second, because I still, so my schedule. I wake up at 5:45 in the morning. I've got twin boys that are 8. We do our morning stuff, and then I actually go to the car dealership. I'm there until about noon every day, 12:30 every day, and then I come to Vincue, which is where I'm at now, and I'm here until the evening, and that's my day every single day. Early on, we knew that different was better than better. And so I didn't want to chase better. I wanted to chase different. And the differentiator for us was we were the home of the $3,000 to $12,000 price range. And that was before we only accepted cash. We never even did finance. And we were the place that you could come and buy an $8,500 Nissan Altima that has been through service, that you would get an excellent experience on. The same if you were buying a Mercedes. And we knew that those customers didn't have 2 other cars in their driveway. So this experience and this car, they depended on more than a consumer buying a $40,000 car, because most likely they had others, right? And so buying that type of inventory has always been hard. But when you have it, selling it is super easy. So what we needed to do was spend our time learning how to be ninjas in the acquisition space. And so we created these partnerships with local car dealerships, but then also Harley Davidson stores and Camping Worlds of the world, and areas that we knew we could have a captive audience to buy all of their cars, the good, bad, and the ugly. I called it WAR, wholesale auction retail. And then we would buy them, and then we bring them into service, and then we would go through our process, and then wholesale what we was out of our market to maybe a new car store, auction what didn't meet our expectations, and retail what we could retail. And so that foundation is what helped us evolve into the next phase of our growth, which was today. If you look on my website, we still have the largest selection of cars under $15,000. I've got over 100 of them, and they're hard to get. Quality cars. I'm not talking. This is Kansas is a consumer protection state. We do not sell as is. These are certified vehicles with a comprehensive warranty on them that we sell after, and they go through service, and I've got to be able to communicate those values to the consumer and stand out right on third parties. So, but then it gave us the privilege to also learn how to compete in that $20,000 segment, in that $30,000 segment, in that $40,000 segment, because that's a crowded space. But it comes down to the same business basics, which is good people with good hearts doing good things.
How fast, if someone, let's say, all right, I bring you into my stores, right? Get it all set up. How fast am I making better decisions that could impact my bottom line?
So I'll answer this a couple of ways. So the psychologist once told me the quickest way to change your mood is to change your environment. You get away from either people or processes or things that influence your decisions, right? That's ultimately what lends to behavior. Kyle Monsier says this. He says, if you want to change perception, you gotta change behavior first of people, and then that will change the perception of your clientele. Well, the software is specifically this, right? DMS is different. DMS is accounting, and in back end is a different conversation. CRM is a lot more is process relative to a relationship management, but inventory management is so critical because that is your decision point.
Hear the word Carvana thrown around a bunch, and I got curious about it, and I said, well, how many cars did they buy from the public last year? And you can Google it because they're a privately traded company, or it's a publicly traded company. And the number was like 48,000 cars from the public. So it sounds like a big number, right? Well, okay, here's my TI-83 from college.
I've paid for a couple of those for my kids, Danny.
So you take 48,000, divide it by, call it 50 states, right? That's 960, divided by 12 months. That's 80 cars per state per month. That is a very easily overcomable number for dealers, because I believe that he or she who has the inventory has the opportunity. And so it is a welcome wake-up call for dealers who've been doing good business selling to now use the same strategies to acquire inventory directly from the consumer, which we do business with and have for 100 years.
Yeah, two dealers that are doing that really effectively right now that I can think of are friends of the show, and that's Rob Ruth and Brian Kramer, for certain.
Yep. Rob and I were talking. He's been an early adopter of our solution, and him and Jeremy and that whole team have embraced it from a culture perspective. Him and I talk about this. When you call our stores, we ask, are you calling about buying a car or selling a car? And it changes. It changes the culture of the store. When you have data like that, then reporting really becomes quite lethal. And because you can now see your acquisition and your exit on every vehicle that you buy, down to the individual that made the decision, down to the look to books on the car, down to the amount of poaches that you made, down to the auction that you're buying from, down to the individuals or strategy, whether it be trades, dealer network, auction, or VBC. You can see all that and organize it in a way that authentically changes behavior. You're no longer making decisions because I felt something. You're making decisions because I see something.
Yep.
And I will tell you, even if you're a one-store independent like me, or if you have 5 stores or 20 stores, in order to compete with online disruptors, this is the direction that we feel it is going.
Yeah.
Because these are the strategies that they're deploying, and these are the tools that they have. In my vision and my team's vision is to give, I want this business to exist in 5 years and in 10 years. And I believe we have an opportunity to eliminate the friction and increase our own effectiveness, because I don't want to look back and go, well, why did this auto industry reform and fail? And the public's going to think it's because we kept doing things the way we used to do them. But quite frankly, the answer is there aren't enough partners out there that are helping us elevate and raise the bar.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. As you were talking, something came into my head and it said it feels to me and sounds to me like empirical intuition. You're gathering a ton of information. You're still able to make a decision on your own, right? There is some level of intuitive decision making that has to occur, even though you're aggregating so much of this rich information as you talk about. And I think that, I'm thinking of Moneyball. Like Moneyball came into my mind as you were talking, and I'm saying this is the Moneyball effect on automotive. And one of the funny parts about that movie, and I think it's relevant here, is that when there was that conflict between the old school scouts and the empirical data that they were driving to the conversation, and it went like this and blew up, as opposed to what it should have done is what you guys have done, is you have blended the ability to make some intuitive decisions based on empirical data. Is that a fair way to put it?
Very fair.
Yeah.
And let me just say that I think where we have the opportunity to make mistakes. I shared, we had an all hands meeting this morning, and when I apply a framework or a filter to the world, from which I try to lead, it's that we are becoming more and more interconnected and dependent on each other. I think that's, whether you like it or not, I think that's the direction the world is going. And I think that there are positive things that affect that, and I think there are negative things that affect that. And our goal is to amplify the positive effects of that. And so that means the idea of scarcity, like thinking another car dealership is opening up down the street and how am I going to conquer, that idea of scarcity isn't scalable. What we get to do is work together as a dealer body to conquer the next evolution of our industry. Otherwise, we're going to go extinct.
We have a lot
I
of people
so agree.
We have a lot of people that listen to the show outside of auto, and sometimes we get auto specific on here. But first off, every great business is run by making intelligent decisions, which usually come from data, right? Are you aware of any type of program or tool similar to this outside of auto? And then my follow-up would be, do you guys have any plans to potentially go outside of auto and bring this type of information and insight to other verticals?
So that's a great question. I always have visions of how we could do more, but I think for 2022, let's start there. For 2022, our company's sole purpose and vision is to go deeper, not wider. We want our partners, and I mean that seriously, because I'm on the dealer side and I know what it feels like to have a quote unquote vendor versus a partner, and how that relationship can become toxic when there's expectations that are the way you manage the relationship rather than innovation. So we are interested in creating the best possible outcomes for our dealers, period. And that means we have to be open every single day to listening to feedback and to figuring out how we can create solutions within the system that increase profitability today, while also steering the bigger ship and creating things that are harder to do, like inter-dealer trading and the complexities that has, and figuring out how we can help dealers stand out online. So you've got a lot of variables at play here.
I just think about all the information you're providing, and the decisions are great. Obviously, being able to make a better decision is priority number one, right? But the amount of time and effort you're saving people, not that they could ever get all this info on their own anyways, but the amount of time and effort to try and make a similar decision without this knowledge or these insights. I mean, it's just not even hours. I mean, it's just
Well, Scott, I
hours
think
upon hours. I mean,
you touch upon something, and I don't know that it's even as much a time element as it's much as an accuracy piece, right? So you can pull all this data and make just snap better decisions. Most of the time, I think, Danny, prior to, they weren't spending a lot of time going through 20 different, they would look at a number of different tools, but they weren't looking at 17. You know, now you have one place for them to go focus their energy.
Can I give you an example, Sandy?
Yeah.
So my team prior to Vincue used to use a big national competitor to us. And what would happen is they would appraise a car. They would spend the time filtering down the car to get the best number on it, right? And then all of a sudden we made that acquisition, and then guess where it would go? Into another system for syndication. And all that effort that happened in the appraisal gets lost on the syndication. And now we're just shoving out a vanilla toast decode that has minimal value to the consumer. And then when we're doing repricing, we're using the market pricing tool that, again, doesn't accurate. The filters may be right, but the value isn't. It's disparate. It's not connected. And that is just one piece of that vehicle's acquisition life cycle. Excuse me, one piece of that total life cycle. That doesn't take into account all the other intelligence that comes from what are you going to do when you rebuy it, right? So you're screwing up in the front, and then later you make a small gross and a slow churn on it, and then what do you think? Well, I'm not going to do that again. But it had nothing to do with the car. It had to do with the way information was going out to the world. And so we're in an online business now. So we have to have solutions that are timely.
So I like to follow certain people. I follow anybody that's out there putting good content out there. I'll pay attention and stuff like that. But there are a handful of people I pay a lot of attention to and really focus in on. Who's that for you? Besides Sandy and myself.
Danny, don't laugh so hard. Danny, you laughed a little too hard at that question, Dave.
That's funny. Who is that for me? So I'll tell you recently, what I'm learning as I evolve, because I'm still a relatively young guy, 38 years old, and I have a lot of learning to do. And so you're going to think this is super cliche, but I absolutely love Oprah Winfrey. I know that sounds super crazy, but I'll tell you why. I followed her career for a really long time, and how she takes concepts and is such an incredible communicator. And the tribe of people that she surrounds herself and brings together, like attracts like, and as Corey Mosley says, the coalition of the willing. I think that there is in a space like we're in, change like this is hard. Change like this is gritty because there's legacy processes and Kool-Aid that exists. But the question is, why would you do it, right? Are you pulled by vision, or are you pushed by pain? And I do not want to be pushed by pain. It will happen, but that's not the intention. I want to be pulled by vision. And in order to have that vision, you have to have clarity and confidence and experience. And so I've always loved mentors that I can learn something from. And so I'm attracted to those people every single day. And that's why I agreed to be on here with you, because I see you guys out there crushing it, having meaningful conversations, not just stuff that we talked about 10 years ago, but stuff that causes us to think forward. And I love that kind of space.
I love that answer, Danny, because there's a great story about a pile of bricks and there's 3 guys standing next to the pile of bricks, and somebody walks over and says, "What are you guys doing with the pile of bricks?" And the first guy says, "I'm a mason and I'm a bricklayer. I'm here to lay bricks." And the second guy says, "I'm here to build a cathedral." And the third guy says, "I'm here to bring people closer to God." And the guy that was bringing people closer to God was moved by passion, was moved by spirit, something inside of him that drove him. I think that's the message for you, is that you have a passion inside of you to create positive change and a positive impact on the industry.
Yes. Thank you.
I love it. I love it. And
that.
Oprah, I mean, what better true north than Oprah, for God's sakes? You kidding me? Right?
Yeah.
Sandy, when you were 38 years old, what Elvis song was popular at the time? Could you help us with that?
Scott.
So let me ask you, Danny. So let's say we bring in a dealer comes on with your product, right? Instantly, what's the 1 or 2 biggest opportunity if they forgot everything else the thing does? All right, what's the 1 or 2 big opportunities that should smack them right between the eyes right out of the gate?
Today, our appraisal is a different type of appraisal that gives you data that you don't get in any other solution, with opportunities for exit, with different data that you see today. So retail transaction data, holistic wholesale data, meaning it's not one vendor, but it's all the vendors that you do business with that you can see transactions and be able to curate that. So how you appraise a car and then the tools that you have to communicate that to the consumer is paramount. And we continue to make that better and better and better and better. As an example, there are options and features that are expensive when it's new, but a consumer may not care about it when it's used. And having the appetite of that option or feature when disseminating the value of a car is critical, because I don't care if it was expensive. I just care if it's relevant. And so that slight difference in the way that you filter your inventory is important. Why would I care about an option when the consumer doesn't, right? Having that data translated information is paramount. The second thing is being able to get connected directly with the sellers in your market or in a market that you want. So skipping all of these. So an auction, in my opinion, only exists to create confidence between a buyer and a seller. That's it. That is the only reason in my brain an auction exists. So when a dealer can connect directly with a consumer and create the confidence without a middle person, there's so much equity that is gained, not just in profitability, but also in the future state of that business and creating a customer. So those are the 2 areas that within 30 days, dealers see an immediate impact.
So, all right. So let me ask you this. So in the near future, and when I say people, I'm meaning like a position in a business, right? Are there any like people or even tools that you see becoming extremely important in the near future as it relates to this industry?
Yeah, so I believe that systems that simplify and connect the multi-channel communicative world that we live in is going to be really important. So a learning we had is we used to tell all of our team members, hey, text everybody, right? And we made a mistake in that because we didn't know if the person on the other end was my dad, who hates texting, and has fingers this thick, and every time he presses 2 buttons, or if it was somebody who loves texting. And so we learned to ask, how do you want to be communicated with? And the receiving end communication, in order to scale it, because that's how I always think, and how to create less friction, is there's a lot that happens behind the curtain in order to create a simple, seamless experience on stage. And so any systems that are able to A, give the dealer control, and then B, create a seamless experience for the consumer of that product, then that's the direction that we're going.
Yeah.
Danny,
So
I love the point that you made previously with respect to the value prop is more based on relevancy than it is cost to the consumer. I think that's a brilliant point. I think that is the ultimate value proposition, right? Versus having to put a dollar figure on it. Is how relevant is it to the buying decision for that consumer?
How relevant. And there's so much cool data out there right now that exists that I used to think was witch's brew, because like I couldn't touch it. I couldn't feel it. I couldn't see it. But once I got my hands on it, I go, okay, now we can do something with this. If I know a consumer is showing behavior of wanting to sell their car, right? Forget retargeting. Let's target to consumers who show behavior that they're trying to sell their car and help them solve that problem. Same applies for 1,000 different selling strategies. But you guys know that.
I love.
This is why we work with you.
I love what you just said there, because one of the things that we do on the marketing side that aligns exactly with what you're saying there is you can look at your previous customer database, right? This goes for any business. It doesn't matter what vertical you're in. You can look at your previous customer database and you can initially segment them and say, all right, here's our active customers, here's our inactive customers, and inactive, you'd have to determine how you define that. But once you get in there, I want to go backwards. I want to look at the inactive customers and what were the patterns that they were showing as it led to the defection, right? All right. Were they, seeing us less frequently? Was it some type of geographical situation? Were they starting to spend less? What were the patterns? Because you should be able to take those insights, apply them to the active customers, and then start having a completely different segment that I would label as at risk. Here are people that are trending towards, they're
more
showing
predictive,
a similar
more
pattern
predictive.
that are about to leave you.
Yeah,
And
more
to
predictive.
me, it's always, it's easier to save and retain when you have that information it's easier to retain someone before they actually leave you than to try and win them back. And so to me, when you're speaking that, I'm just sitting there like, yeah, that's exactly in a different way, how we've been doing it for years on that. And it's so critical because, I mean, you can spend a fortune trying to win back lost customers. It's a heck of a lot more profitable and more effective saving them before they leave you.
You're exactly right. Right. But I mean, this is the most exciting time that I've ever had in the car business. I think, just speaking to leadership, I think a good leader, tells his people where we're going and why, and that continues to evolve. And I think that's just so cool. And in a time of kind of great disruption, leaders like us relish in it because we're the ones that are saying, hey, there's a better way. And instead of just talking about it, here's what we're doing about it.
Do you see, is there anything from a data standpoint or inside information where you see a lot of leaders maybe wasting their time? Like you're looking here a lot, but you're looking at the wrong spot. You don't need to worry about that.
Yeah. So I saw that for years, by the way, because UIs kept changing, but the information didn't. So the colors and the patterns and the shiny objects kept changing, but the way. So just be curious when you are making decisions that affect your bottom line, because in the car business, when I make an acquisition, right, that affects my title office, that affects my salespeople, my detail people, my recon people. I mean, that car has an effect on my entire business, right? And so for those that are in a positional power that are making these decisions, be curious about why. I used to triple check myself and say, okay, forget the tool. Let me just go out in the market old school and see what I find. And when I appraise that car, am I making the same decision in my tool? Give 3 cars to your sales management team and ask them to all appraise the same cars and then collect that data and see where they land. And then be curious about where are their eyeballs going? Are they looking at transactions? Are they looking at retail? Are they curating the comp set? Like, what are they doing in order to make that decision? Because that affects everything. And that type of work will increase your company's profitability without spending any money.
Yeah. So is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think needs to be brought up? Is there any questions we have not asked you? You're like, how do you not ask me that?
Who do you look up to?
Oh, well, I tend to favor.
Look to your right, Danny. Just look to your right.
So, I really, Jay Abraham, especially when I started the agency, was a guy I absorbed. Anything he put out, I was gobbling it up. And I would say Anthony Robbins along those lines as well. Donald Moore today, Sandy introduced me to him. Love what he's putting out currently. So I tend to gravitate towards marketers, people that have some type of influence when it comes to helping us in sales and running a business or self-improvement type stuff. Those are the people that I'm paying the most attention to.
Sandy, how about you?
Sandy?
I would second Scott's three, but I would add, I love Donald Miller. He's really like my new brain crush right now. I just love the way he approaches things from a story-based position. I love Jim Rohn. I'm an old Jim Rohn guy, and I love Jim Rohn because I think it's so fundamentally sound in terms of how you live your life and how you put passion behind everything that you do as the fuel, if you will. And then I think the third, if I had to pick, the third person I'm paying the most attention to right now, Gary V. Gary Vaynerchuk. There's so much that Gary Vaynerchuk brings to the party. I know he's got the 4-letter word deal. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. I'm a New York car guy, so it doesn't make a difference to me. But I think he is so insightful and so unbelievably self-aware. I think you talked about self-awareness before, Danny. He's so unbelievably self-aware. He's a guy that I've been paying a lot of attention to as well.
Wow. You know what I think about that? I think I have 3 mentors here in Kansas City. Dan Nielsen, who owns a event company called Bishop McCann, Lyril Holt, who started CarStar, grew it to 350 locations and sold it. And then Barnett Hellsberg, who previously owned Hellsberg Diamonds before he sold it to Warren Buffett. These are all 3 Kansas City guys that have mentored me now for 5 or 6 years. And they all talk about creating a boardroom for your life and having those people that sit at that table and how they influence your decisions, both personally and financially and in business. And I think that's very telling. So thank you both.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.
I am shocked that Sandy didn't mention his childhood friend, Napoleon Hill. So,
I'll tell you,
people don't know that Sandy helped co-author.
Scott, one time driving through Pennsylvania with Napoleon, and I can recall him talking fondly about J.P. Morgan specifically. Yeah.
So, Danny, you guys, your company, Vincue, you guys are going to be participating in Business Bourbon and Cigars. We got a little video that we'll show real quick here. Then we'll come back.
We got a rain check. Scott, we got a rain check with Danny on Business Bourbon and Cigars. It may be worthy, in my humble opinion, Danny, for us to make a little trip out to KC.
I would love that.
Hop on the bird, come out and have a steak in Kansas City, Scott. How are we turning that down?
I agree 100%.
Right, and I'll put it on.
Hey, I'll tell you what.
Man, don't worry about it.
If I'll tell you, I've got the time to do it.
Yes.
If there's a couple big ifs. If the Chiefs can beat the Bills, all right.
Okay.
And the Bengals can beat the Titans, that means Cincinnati has to go to Kansas City.
Oh, look at that.
And so I might do that run.
I like
and kill 2 birds with 1 stone there. I am Scott Joseph. Thanks for joining us on Move, Crush, Count. Once again, if you want more information on Danny and Vincue, you can visit Vincue.com. I want you to make sure to do that. Make sure you also follow Move, Crush, Count on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. You can join our groups on Facebook and LinkedIn, where experts like Danny are part of those groups. You can fire away questions to him. He'll be more than happy to answer any question you might have. You can visit movecrushcount.com and make sure that you're brought up to speed on all future guests and new episodes. Today's interview was sponsored by J&L Marketing, a digital marketing agency helping business leaders outsmart and outmarket their toughest competitors, not outspend them. So if you believe your marketing can perform better and you want an agency that specializes in deep data, marketing strategy, campaign management, I want you to check out J&L Marketing so you can enjoy the excitement that comes when you move the crowd, crush the competition, and count the money. Everybody have a great day.
All right, guys.
Thank you guys.